Now, it was back in 2012 that One Direction secretly visited the TV3 studios to sit down for a very special chat with Exposé's anchorwoman.
Yes, before we look back on that day in September, let's take a look at this clip.
Lads, let's talk about August of last year. Your debut single, What Makes You Beautiful, becomes the fastest-selling #1 of 2011. What was it like releasing that first single together as a group?
That was the first little bit we got from the album. So to hear that sort of news, I mean, we were massively nervous when we were releasing, just wondering what's going to happen, and then to break a record and have that sort of number as well is just wicked. So we were really impressed.
Yeah.
We were just saying he always had a bit of a mature
head on him.
Totally. He was very much the spokesperson.
Karen, what are your memories from that day back in 2012, 12 years ago?
12 years ago, my God. Well, it's funny that you mentioned there in the intro that it was secret. It was cloaked in secrecy. Like, we couldn't speak about this to family or friends for fear that there would be hordes of girls outside the TV3 studio, as it was at the time, because they were really at the peak of their superpowers. So we were sworn to secrecy. I think we were just so worried it would fall through. We were like, they would go to another TV show. Yeah, exactly. They'd cancel.
I remember those phone calls to record labels because other media outlets got wind of this.
Yeah, oh really?
And they were like, Exposé's got this, why haven't we got it? So that's a bigger one.
Yeah, it was a big deal because, normally with Exposé you get 6 minutes, but this was like a full half-hour special. It was called One Direction, the story so far. Wow. Yeah, it is rare to get that amount of time. Yeah. Especially, as I said, they were so big. But then they walk in and you're like, oh my God, you're teenagers. Like, they're tiny. Do you know what I mean? Like these big, powerful lads that you think they're going to be, and they're just so normal. Like, Niall was still wearing his train tracks. Do you know, like, just so normal. I think Harry had already dated, poor late, we're talking about another tragic death, but Caroline Flack, that romance was already done. But they just seemed so youthful, and they had so much going for them at that time. They'd already gone to the top of the Billboard, the Hot 100. They'd gone in at #1. It was the first time a UK band had ever done that. Yeah. They'd starred in a Pepsi commercial. They had beaten Adele and Ed Sheeran to win a Brit. So I remember interviewing them like, oh, and you did this, and really enough, they sat and they were like, we did? Yeah. Like, it was like it just hadn't dawned on them yet. Like, they were kind of just, it's almost like, have you seen the Celine Dion documentary?
Yes.
Yeah. And she talks about, I've travelled the world, but I haven't seen anything or anywhere. Yeah. And you kind of got that impression that it just hadn't really landed.
Well, they worked hard. They were constantly promoting, working, recording, shooting.
And they talk about that in the interview. It was like, I was like, how are you handling it? Like, what do you do on your days off? But like, they couldn't really be normal on their days off. Like, they kind of did become prisoners of their fame. Like, they were staying home and they were just staying in hotel rooms. So now that you look at it through the lens of 2024 and given the last events of the last 24 hours, it seems sadder, whereas before it seemed, oh, this is glitzy and this is wonderful.
It's exciting.
It does, you can see the tinges of sadness.
I mean, it was almost a case of health and safety due to the pandemonium that would have been outside their rooms.
And they talk about an incident in New York, and the pavement is just, or the sidewalk is, covered with teenage girls screaming at them, that they'd so many safety guards that their feet literally didn't touch the ground because they were just bolstered up so much. And they talk about, we've great people around us and this and that. And again, when you kind of look back now,
And we never experienced any of this before because there was no social media. Like, people talk about the Beatles or they talk about Westlife, and that was always there. But because everyone had phones.
But that was what I was thinking. I know there was no way. Like, I have a picture of me with them, but I didn't have Instagram wasn't around, so it's not like we were even posting pictures of them. So it's so different. Pop stars have to be so much more than they used to be.
I mean, among the tributes, some have called for a more duty of care in the music industry, especially when you're handling artists so young, like One Direction. Yeah,
Mikey Graham from Boyzone, he said there needs to be some sort of duty of care, and Rebecca Ferguson has called for it as well. A lot of people have, and I think they're right, because, they're in front of 80,000 people in Croke Park. They're doing all these things. But what happens at the downtime?
Yeah.
What happens when they walk outside and they can't go for a pint or they can't go to the shop because someone's coming over?
Or how can they even process what's happening to them at that moment in time?
And I think that's why, and not that you can kind of single people out or go, oh, he'll be most vulnerable to this or that. But Liam, as we said, he was like the unofficial almost the spokesperson, the more mature. He seemed to have the business savvy going on
the
as
dad
well.
of the group.
Totally. Like he would always have a more considered answer, perhaps, than the other lads. Like I remember very clearly, like Louis and Niall really messing to the. I was like, "You're not listening to my question. Listen to me." Like the clock is
You
ticking.
went into mom mode.
I totally just like,
mom mode
"This together."
activated.
You were going to be ushered out of this building in 2 seconds.
They were so young at the time. Karen, do you think they realised how famous they were and that they were going to be? They just got more and more famous up until they kind of separated, and then they became individually famous as solo artists.
No, because I remember asking them that, and I was like, what would you be doing right now if the X Factor hadn't happened? Like, Niall hadn't even done 6 year. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're so young. Liam says, I would have been in college studying music. So you see already, you could see he was going to be a songwriter even if he hadn't ended up front and centre. Yeah. So I don't think they'd any idea of what life was going to be like. And like that, maybe with the onset of social media and how much more you need to give to fans now as a pop star.